afternoon. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to now introduce Reverend Phillips, who will lead us in the invocation.
May we pray. Eternal in the heavens, as a blessed people of faith and as children of the way, we can look upon history and see how in the midst of trying times and precarious circumstances, that you raised up strong leadership with hearts for truth and mercy and justice, and character imbued with courage. The dark lingering clouds of the present age calls to you for you to raise up a quality of leader, that kind of quality of leader among us. Thus we ask for you to give us the acumen of wisdom so we can choose correctly. As a gathering, we also ask your blessing for this moment. May that blessing extend to those who organized and prepared, those who prepared and those who served this meal. May your blessing upon this food nourish our bodies as our bodies serve you. For it's through your Son's name we pray. Amen. May we now receive Attorney General Wilson.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing today? It's hard to hear back there. They like church. Get out there. My name is Attorney General. Actually, my name is Alan Wilson. I'm your Attorney General. They didn't make me Attorney General. But it's an honor and a privilege to serve as Attorney General for the state of South Carolina. And it is an honor and privilege to be back in this very same room to host another presidential forum for the folks here in this community. One of the things I love about my job is the opportunity to create forums where folks can come together from various areas in South Carolina and get to meet people who are offering their names for the highest office in the land, the presidency of the United States. And I think that is something special that's not here in South Carolina, that we get to see presidential candidates much the way people get to see folks running for town council. They are everywhere, all over the state, and that is a good thing for us. We pick presidents here in South Carolina most of the time, and it is an opportunity for all of us to clap for that. I was going to actually bring you down here, but you snuck up on me, kind of anticlimactic. But one of the reasons that we're doing this is that, I don't know if many of you knew this, but 4 of the 9 Supreme Court justices were born in the 1930s. Think about that for a second. Not knocking anyone born in the 1930s, great folks, but the point is the next president of the United States could appoint up to 3, 4, or even 5 Supreme Court justices, depending on how long they serve as president. Which means that the next president of the United States could have an impact that far exceeds their term in office, that they could have a profound footprint on American history. And that is why this decision that we're about to make, coming up in a couple of months in early next or late next year, is going to be so important not only for us, this generation, but for my children and the generations to follow. Governor John Kasich is here today to offer himself up as a candidate for the presidency of the United States, having served in Congress, also as governor of Ohio, and served in the private sector. He can tell you a little bit more about his background in just a moment. But there's an opportunity for us to really get to hear him, and he's not going to be on stage with 13, 14 other people. You're going to get to hear up close and personal his views on various issues. Now, I've done a couple of these things already, and people always say, you didn't touch on this issue or that issue. There are so many issues out there. We can't talk about all of them. But I do want to talk about the issues that I, as Attorney General, have had to deal with. And those are the issues involving the role of the federal government as it relates to states and state sovereignty and individual liberty. So just a few seconds, I'm going to hand it off and let Governor Kasich make an opening remark. But I want to thank all of you for being here today. You could be anywhere else, and you chose to be here for lunch today, for a lunch and learn. And I want to thank all of you for taking time. You're going to get to hear Governor Kasich talk about his views, his vision for America and our country and the direction we need to go. Then you're going to take that information, you're going to be armed, you're going to use that, and you're going to go make an informed decision in a couple of weeks. And more importantly, you're going to probably influence other decision makers, other voters here. So Governor Kasich, you've got some force multipliers out here today that are going to be spreading your message. So I hope, and I know that you will take full advantage of this opportunity. So ladies and gentlemen, it's at this time that I would like to go ahead and formally introduce Governor John Kasich. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Coming down here this week, as I expected, it was going to be extremely cold in Ohio, and it's warmer in Ohio today than it is in South Carolina. I guess it's been the crazy, I do want to hear about politics and all that, but it's been the craziest fall. You know that this week is projected, every day is supposed to be in the 50s, and then this weekend it's supposed to be 60 degrees in Ohio. Is that unbelievable? All right. What's the temperature going to be here? 70. Okay, 70. All right. Well, you got to beat by a little bit. Anyway, it's nice to be here with the Attorney General. He's a good guy, smart guy, know his daddy. And rather than getting into a big diatribe now, we'll just start asking questions. And maybe, I don't know, General, if it's all right with you, but maybe at some point we can have a couple of them jump up and bellow out of the crowd if they have something they haven't heard.
Governor, that's your call. I'm going to do best to keep this within an hour, so we'll go as quickly as we possibly can. And any balance of the time you want to give to the audience, we'll certainly do that.
We just want to make sure they don't leave here saying, well, why didn't they ask this? Now, if it's really hard questions, please don't ask.
I have to do one thing, one more housekeeping thing before we jump into it. Before I do that, I wanted to say this. This table's very wobbly, Governor, and you got a hot cup of coffee.
It's fine, I can control it.
So, so y'all might actually see some hot coffee spilled on the Governor later during the hour. But we're going to try to be very conversational. This isn't going to be like a debate. This is going to be very conversational, like we're sitting in a restaurant talking about issues, and you're all sitting in the booth with us. That's what we're going for. Now, first, I want to go ahead and thank some folks before we jump into the questions with the Governor. I should have done this before he started talking, but first, this is the second time we've done this. I've got to thank the Grand Strand Business Alliance and the Myrtle Beach Chamber of Commerce, Area Chamber of Commerce, for so much. Keenan, I see you in the back. Brad Dean, who is not here today, has been such an instrumental part in their staffs. What an amazing group of people who represent the business community here so well. So at least give them a round of applause real quick. Jim Creel and the Crown Reef Resort and Conference Center staff, all of the folks that helped put this together. What a wonderful venue for us. I want to go ahead and thank them. And we have a lot of important people here today. You're all important in my opinion, but I do want to identify some of the electeds that traveled to be with us today. We have Councilman Bob Childs is with us, Councilman Cam Crawford, Horry County School Board Chairman Joe DeFeo, Chairman Randy Hollister, Georgetown GOP. We have Chairman Robert Raven with the Horry County GOP. Councilman Gary Lotus from Horry County. We have Senator Ray Clary sitting up here in the front. Representative Greg Duckworth. Representative Russell Fry. We have Representative Heather Ammons Crawford. I already mentioned Brad Dean earlier in the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber and the Grand Strand Business Alliance, but there's one other person I want to give a quick shout out to, and we have a Conservative Leadership Project intern today who it is her 20th birthday, and she is here volunteering. Where is Sarah Abbott? Sarah Abbott, there she is. She's behind the camera, ladies and gentlemen. Happy birthday, Sarah. We would sing happy birthday, but we don't want to get into the time of the Governor. So we're going to go ahead and listen. If I omitted your name, I'm sure someone will pass me a note in a minute. We'll identify you at the back end, but we're going to go ahead and jump into the whole reason that we're here. Okay, Governor, you heard in my initial kickoff that the next president is going to have a profound impact on the Supreme Court. As a governor, you've had the opportunity to appoint a lot of judges in your home state. So the first question I would like to ask, go ahead and tell the audience here a little bit about your judicial philosophy. I know that we don't believe in litmus tests, but what things are you looking for in a judicial candidate for the Supreme Court or one of the lower courts?
Well, I've appointed well over 100 judges and also one member of the Ohio Supreme Court. All of our judges are elected. Sometimes they're appointed if there's a vacancy. It happens that the person that I appointed to the Ohio Supreme Court happens to be a woman, which I'm thrilled that we came to that conclusion. I basically set up a committee and I charged them with picking somebody who, is basically conservative. And what do I mean by that? Their job is to interpret the law as it is, not to make the law. I mean, we don't want to have judges making laws. That's not their job. That's the legislative branch. And so I look for character, I look for record, I look for intelligence, and it's worked out pretty well. General, we've had good success, and a number of people that we have appointed have been elected. That doesn't mean necessarily that that makes them a good judge, but if they're screwing things up and not representing the philosophy that I felt they were going to, they probably wouldn't win. So we have a good success rate, and the lady that serves on the Ohio Supreme Court is doing a fantastic job. So I don't want judges to basically, you look at their record, you see who they are, and maybe not everybody has to be a judge. I mean, you might have somebody that comes from, a law school or something who, could serve well, but you want somebody that's going to have common sense, good values, and not try to make law.
Another question I always ask folks, and this is important to me, that I view there's two kinds of judges, and there's one kind that views the U.S. Constitution or state constitution with its original intent, the original intent of the people who drafted it. In other words, whatever year they wrote that Constitution, and they intended that Constitution to mean X, Y, and Z, and if the times required in the Constitution to change, then it should be ratified through a process outlined in the Constitution. Then there are others who view the Constitution as a living document, meaning that it evolves with the times, and it might have been written to mean this 100 years ago, but times require us to interpret it differently, and so they view it as a living document that changes with the times. What are your views on that, and what would you expect your judges' views to be on that?
I don't think that the Constitution ought to evolve with the times. It is what it is, and if you want to change it, then you have an amendment process. For example, I'm trying to pass an amendment to the U.S. Constitution to require a federal balanced budget. I don't think the judges ought to mandate it. It ought to be passed. So, no, I think we have too many things in our society that are changing all the time. There got to be a few compasses, don't you all think? There got to be a couple compasses that we have in the world, and one of them ought to be the Constitution of the United States of America. So that's pretty simple for me.
What Supreme Court, I don't want to say recent Supreme Court decisions, but they can be recent. They can be from 70 years ago, whatever. What Supreme Court decisions do you disagree with the most, and why?
Well, there's some people that think the court's going to make some kind of a ruling on gun control. That, and I didn't agree with the court decision on the individual mandate. I just think they obscured what the language said, and those are a couple that I disagree with. And I think whenever you have a court, you're going to find disagreements, but you, by and large, want to have a court that's going to interpret the laws as written. I think the individual mandate, was defined ultimately as some sort of a tax or something. So I don't happen to agree with that.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move to the next area, which is executive action, or as I like to refer to it as the phone and pen section. Y'all all heard the president say that he has a phone and he has a pen and he's going to use it. I'll give you two brief examples that I've dealt with as Attorney General. When I first came into office, one of the first issues we dealt with was the Yucca Mountain issue. As many of you know, that over 30 years, numerous bipartisan Congresses have designated Yucca Mountain, which is out in Nevada, as a nuclear repository for the state's nuclear waste. Billions of dollars were spent doing environmental impact studies. Billions of dollars were spent studying the potential impacts this could have. Cost-benefit analysis was done. They even constructed a 6-mile-long road in the middle of the mountain to help facilitate storing of the waste. South Carolina, I don't know if you knew this, is the third highest rate payer into the nuclear waste fund. So anytime you pay your utility bill, a fee is tacked on top of that and was collected by the utility companies and then collected by the federal government to pay for all of that work at Yucca Mountain. I think South Carolina's paid several $1 billion in 30 years. Unilaterally, the Secretary of Energy unilaterally took that off the table without any input from Congress. So it was just unilaterally done. They said, keep your nuclear waste, we'll keep the money. That's basically
got a lot of input from Congress, from the guy who's the senator from Nevada.
Well, and absolutely, but from a process standpoint, it was a decision that was unilaterally executed. Yes, the majority leader at the time was from Nevada. That is not lost on us. Another issue, and I'm going to go ahead and pitch the question. in November of last year, the president stated that I just took action to change the law in reference to the immigration law. A phrase that the White House later clarified as the president speaking colloquially. This was in reference to his executive order on immigration, which would allow 5 million legal immigrants to remain in the U.S., and he based it on the executive branch's ability to have prosecutorial discretion. Do you believe federal administrative agencies are required to operate based on congressional or executive action when the two are in conflict?
Well, look, I mean, I'm suing the Obama administration right now on their EPA.
Me too.
I mean, I'm glad we have something going on. And the reason is that it's a thing I don't quite understand. Now, I used to be a congressman, and I don't think we've ever seen this kind of activity. I can't remember any. I don't think, General, that the bureaucrats shouldn't be making laws either. And this is something that I don't quite understand. I have an economic proposal to balance the federal budget to cut taxes, and I've done this before. I was chairman of the budget committee in Washington, and we created jobs. That's the whole purpose for it. The economy was growing, the same thing in Ohio. We were way in the hole, and now we're doing terrific, with still ways to go. But the thing I've never understood is why we let bureaucrats do what they do. So in regard to that, I would freeze all federal regulations for at least a year, and I would force the Congress to vote on these things. If it's more than $100 million, there ought to be a congressional vote. And then when you go back and look at the regulations we have, because these are the things that are killing small business. Big companies can absorb a lot of these regulations, but small people can't do it. In my state, and look, when I talk about Ohio, I'm really talking about America. We're just nothing more than a snapshot of the entire country. I mean, we have everything in Ohio. When I travel the country, I find Ohio everywhere, and when I'm in Ohio, I find America everywhere. That's why the elections are always so close, because it's so competitive and a snapshot of who we are. I have created a mechanism that we begin to repeal regulations that don't make any sense. And if I found out that my bureaucrats were making law, how long do you think they'd be there doing that? Okay, they wouldn't be doing that, because I'm the governor and I got a legislature. So the idea that unelected bureaucrats can do all this is a really, it's a bad idea. Secondly, what we really need to do is, I got to get a lot more programs back to where you live. I mean, why run all this stuff out of Washington? Education ought to be run in South Carolina, Medicaid ought to be run, transportation. Hey, I'll give you another example. Senators here, they've been struggling like crazy to figure out a transportation bill. Do you have that done yet, Senator? What are you here for? You better be back there getting this done. But here's what I'm proposing. So why not just not send it there to begin with? Okay, and then what we could do is we need to maintain the interstate. So put a couple pennies down there in the till, let them maintain the interstate, and then you can keep whatever you raise here, you keep. And then you can pave your roads whatever you want. You can have whatever priorities you want. This shouldn't be, somebody in Washington trying to decide what should be happening in South Carolina. Now, we've actually voted on this several times, and I guess we're getting a little bit closer to passing it. But I feel very strongly about the ability of states to manage their own infrastructure. For example, I believe in tolling. Okay, I don't know how you all feel about it, but if you use something, pay for it. You don't have to toll everything, but some things you can toll. Right now, you can't toll a road that has federal money in it unless you go out and build another lane. Isn't that right, Senator? What kind of deal is that? And then the federal government decides to do things like Amtrak. They've got, I don't know if you know this, if you've ever been on an Amtrak train, but they have a restaurant on there, and the restaurant can't even make money. And it's not like you can get off, So, and they offered me, by the way, a high-speed train. This is really great. It was going to go from Columbus to Cleveland, maybe to Cincinnati. High speed. It was going to go 39 miles an hour. I could run faster than the train. So better than sending our money down there to have people do what they want with it, just keep it here. And I think, Senator, the whole country would be better under this. And if there's some states that need a little extra help, we'll throw another penny in. That's where we ought to be going on this. This is the 21st century, by the way. But, you know, the fact is that these regulations are killing small businesses. Secondly, I think there ought to be, when you do a regulation, and there ought to be a sense that the benefit outweighs the cost. We don't do that either. I mean, it's just all screwed up, isn't it? So we got to have big change. Now, let me explain something to you. People can talk about big change. I've delivered big change. I know how to get these things done. It's one thing to talk about them. Senator, am I right? It's another thing to do them. And the things I talk about are not designed to get me, you know, they're not an election document. They are a governing document. And so I think these things I talk about today are things that I hope you would understand. These are the kind of things I would do, like, right off the bat.
Thank you, Governor. Just a moment ago, I mentioned one of the executive overreaches on immigration. I might add that 27 states, including South Carolina, challenged that at the district and the appellate level, have blended both levels, and now we're going to possibly the top level. But that begs the next question on immigration. You know, what would you do to solve or to address the illegal immigration problem in the United States?
Well, the first thing we have to do is secure the border, obviously. I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't think that that's the case, because we don't want people just walking into our country. Frankly, you know, we now have to take a look at our entire visa program in light of what's been happening. But here, you know, physically, the border needs to be secured. And then I think we need to have a guest worker program where people can come in and go out legally with an employer who needs their services. And then for the 11, 12 million that came here, broke the law to get here, if they haven't broken any other laws, I'd have them pay some penalties, some fines, do some things, and I would allow them to have a path to legalization, not citizenship. I mean, the idea that we're going to deport 11 million people is ridiculous. It's not going to happen. I mean, you can all think, some of you may think it's going to happen. It ain't going to happen. So let's try to figure out how to, one, secure the border, make sure you have a legitimate guest worker program. Let's hire an employer. Let's make sure we hold employers responsible for violating what the law is. And let's make sure that anybody that comes across, once the border is secured, goes back. No arguments, no lawyers, no discussion, just go back. Come in legally. And then I think that's something that could literally pass the Congress. And I think the public, when everything settles down, I think they think that was fine. I was there when Ronald Reagan tried to deal with this issue in 1986. The problem was we didn't secure the border. So that needs to be done, and then I think we can get this resolved.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next area, which is federalism and the 10th
We're going
Amendment.
to talk about executive orders, by the way, because some of this, or is that coming later?
Well, yeah.
I mean, as an executive, I like executive orders, okay, so, and I like executive power. But let me tell you that I do some executive orders. But the one thing you don't want to do, unless you absolutely have to with an executive order, is you want to make sure you're talking to the legislature. So we got some state reps and obviously senator here. If I was going to move on an executive order, I'd kind of tell them, what do you think? I'd want to check it out, because what I don't want to do is to enrage the people who I'm going to need to work with to get other things done. And I think what the president did on these executive orders is he didn't even make an effort to talk to the legislative leaders. He didn't ever call them down to the White House and say, look, here's what I'm going to do if you don't do something. Can we sit down and work something out? That's kind of how it works. Now that may be boring in a presidential campaign, but that's how it works, folks. And in my state, we've gone from a loss of 350,000 jobs to a gain of almost 400,000, from a deficit of $8 billion to a $2 billion surplus with a strong credit rating, so I kind of know how to do this. And I have my squabbles with the legislature, but not much, because you have to respect them. And I think what the president did was just to roll over everybody. And you just can't do that as an executive. I mean, every once in a while, General, I mean, maybe every once in a while you got to say, this is just the way it's going to be, and this is what we're going to do. But you don't want to make that a habit or a practice, because frankly, we're all part of a team to try to lift whatever situation we're in. whether we're the mayor, whether we're on the city council, whether we're the school board. I mean, people gotta work together to get things done and to make sure that we get good outcomes.
All right, thank you, Governor. Good answer. Now we're going to move to federalism and the 10th Amendment. What is the proper role of the federal government as it relates to the states? So when I talk to high school groups,